Hey Cody, it's Neuron. So we're gonna review your footage now, and I'll basically just go through any spots that I think need going through. So just in order of everything. So we open sixes, face a donk lead, and definitely mainly just calling here, not looking to raise almost ever. I'm not sure if you voiced over any of the content, but it's not too important. Most of the time, it's not going to impact our decision too much, like my thought processes too much. Here, I'd actually be looking to call, especially on regular tables when you should be using a HUD, but you should have reads that this guy is very likely to be a fish and just call the river, because if they're a fish, they're going to show up with like way too much air in the spot. So like think about the line, right? You open, he just donk leads into you, which is usually very bluff heavy to begin with. So like fish here are just gonna have way too many bluffs, so you'll see random shit like Jack 9 offsuit and stuff that they get to this spot with, and I would just never fold, knowing that they will just have way too many bluffs. Queen 10 obviously, like a hand that we can fold. So I mean, it looks like you've cut out some of the spots, which is nice. That's very helpful. Or maybe you just have some other table software. Doesn't matter. So here I just look to check fold multi-way. I think calling here is a bit too loose. Again, because this guy's betting into two players, so I would only call here if I had a backdoor flush draw. Otherwise, we're probably just calling way too many hands. Like multi-way, there's just no need to defend this, and it's less likely to be profitable to do so as well. So we got ace queen here. Probably looking to jam it in if seat 6 decides to raise against that stack size. And also most likely free betting and getting it in against other players. Mainly because they're short. So it does limp. We should ISO. I think this ISO size is okay, but I'd go to usually 3.5 or 4x. I think this is quite small considering that the population tends to limp call way too many hands against a larger size. So you just want to raise a bit bigger for value. Obviously opening the Jack 9. This is a board where we can either c-bet small or look to like check raise bluff. Completely fine with a c-bet here or a check. Once we get to the river though, we should usually be looking to bluff our jack highs. It is a spot where you might range him to be a bit more pair heavy, but I would still be looking to bluff these to fold out some ace high combinations and even some queen highs. That's kind of one of the issues with betting in these kind of spots with the small sizes. You end up just having to c-bet and then check down a lot. Here this is a bit too loose. I would be looking to just fold versus 3x with this hand. There's an argument for flatting a bit wider against weaker opponents, but I would prefer to free bet against this size than to flat, so this is too loose. And the worst hand I'd be looking to call here would be something like ace 4 suited or ace 5 suited. And against a 3x open, I would also just lean towards free bet or fold more from the button versus a cutoff or MP open. Versus under the gun, we can have some more flats, but usually it's a bit better to just free bet more since people don't 4-bet you enough in the first place. So even though you're free betting a lot of high-ish equity hands that don't like folding to 4-bet, you're not getting 4-bet enough. So you would just prefer to free bet those and play a free bet pot in position rather than having the pot end up multi-way or having to play a single raise pot as well. Especially with like ace deuce suited, because you fold out a lot of dominated hands. Here I would also be looking to ISO. I feel like you're sizing 10s, definitely free betting. This is okay size. I'd probably make it 13 though. I think this is a little too small when there's a limper in the pot. So yeah, facing a donk lead, just folding is fine. So hopefully you go like 1/3 pot here. Yeah, that's fine. Main thing I would be doing that I notice you aren't doing is tagging up the plays, like color coding. So labeling people as a recreational player or as a reg, just giving them a color code on ignition. Of course, it's going to disappear when someone new joins the table, but that's kind of the idea, you know, you get reads on people, you take notes. If you're playing regular tables like this, it's very important because you're going to end up with a lot of like useful information that you can later use against them if you take notes. Here obviously never folding, so easy call. Yeah, there you go. So like I would, if I see this and this guy rebuys, I'm instantly taking note of this guy. So if he rebuys, I'm giving him a player tag. I'm giving him a fish tag immediately. So let's see it. Yep. Nice. I like your notes. I personally just also put something like that when I see something very spewy happen. But I think you should also be looking to tag the regs as well. I mean, that's an obvious, like, oh, I know I need to tag this guy because he's punting, but definitely should be much quicker on the note taking. Like, the moment you saw a fish donk bet, like, I would be looking to tag straight away. So let's look at this one. So you peel, check call flop is fine. He checks back the turn. And then he bluffs the river. So, I mean, I would probably just fold here, assuming that the population doesn't bluff enough in that line for the sizing. If they bet like half pot, I would probably consider calling. But we usually don't need to defend these kind of hands at 100, mainly because they won't find enough hands to bluff with. So we got queen 9 suited, we got ace 7. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of like this kind of layout, but if it works for you, it works for you. I think cold calling here is okay, given the small free bet size. And you're likely against a fish, and potentially another fish as well. So potentially like against 2 fish. And with no backdoors, probably just looking to fold here. We're also not drawing to the nuts. Okay, now very easy fold. One issue with this kind of layout is you will end up focusing on like one specific action that you're playing, and then you probably end up ignoring the action that's occurring on other tables when you're not in a hand, and this will cause you to miss out on a lot of important information when you're multi-tabling. Here I would probably just fold this pre-flop. A little bit too loose. Jack 10 suited you could call. If this guy is very fishy, then it's a bit more acceptable. but mainly you're going to be up against two stronger ranges and you won't be able to realize very well out of position. So let's talk about the king-queen one as well. If you have notes that you're against two fish, I'm more inclined to actually squeeze this to get the reg to fold and then to get the fish to peel you. So I have a preference here for squeezing to like 16 or so, or like 15. And if you do this, you'll basically ISO the fish and get the reg to fold most of the time, because the reg can't really peel too light with a player behind him. I mean, there is an argument for flatting and keeping the pot small, but this hand it just doesn't play very well multi-way and you want to get it heads up most of the time, so I'm not really a fan of the call. This hand should just be a fold against 3.5x unless we are very sure that we're against a recreational player like the a7, and I would be looking to defend like ace-9 off plus, so this is too loose. And the king-queen we just have to fold, a7 we call obviously. But even though it's 1/3, we don't have any backdoors, we literally just have two overcards, so this is like way too loose to peel. You could call if you have a club, but without a club it's just a fold. So yeah, now you can't really do anything apart from fold. But originally, like, the flop should have just been folded. Would like to see an ISO to 5 here. Yep. You could even consider going 6 because you're against a fish. And this guy behind you is also likely to be a fish, so you should kind of just like forget about your sizing sometimes in these spots and just play it in a vacuum and just open or like ISO a little bit larger. And obviously here we just get it in. No other play. Alright. So that spot actually should be an open because you're only playing with one player. So you're literally playing like a heads up pot. I mean, there is only one blind in, but you can literally just min raise here. And you should be playing a very wide range, probably around 70 to 80% of hands. Like, it's different to a regular button spot because it's only one player behind instead of two. So your range can expand dramatically. I would not snap. I wouldn't put auto fold on here. If I know this is a fish, then I'm looking to ISO this always. Unfortunately, this guy obviously ISO'd before you, but I would be looking to ISO raise for sure. And with regard to ISO ranges, you should typically ISO a little bit wider than you would open, mainly because you're against a fish and you're in position. So even though you're against like one range already, that range is usually condensed and capped, and it makes a lot of sense to just try and play pots with that guy. Here you can go a lot of different ways with this hand. One option would be to bet on the larger side. Another option would be to go with a strategy that's a lot more simplified and just bet like 1/3 with everything. And obviously this hand can also check back. If you do check back and you pick up a gut shot against a half pot sizing, you should probably be calling. This is just an overfold against that sizing. So if I'm seeing this, then I would probably just suggest you to go with a c-bet line, because you're going to make less mistakes by c-betting than you are by checking back and then overfolding. This is a turn where I would consider having some leading range, mainly because the player 1 is going to not be leading many 9x. And he's still going to have many possible draws, so I would just bet like 1/3 here with a lot of my range. Again, like another spot where you can actually look to lead the river, like small, and you might induce a bluff raise or something. Against this, you probably can just call, but I think, again, it's hard to say what worse hands would call you, so I guess like calling is okay, because you're probably up against a queen a lot. But yeah, I think leading the turn would have been slightly better with your specific holding. Jack 5 I would always open. Yeah, I don't have audio for some reason, if you are using audio in this, but yeah, I can't hear anything, so if you're talking, that's a bit unfortunate that I can't hear anything, but I would definitely look to ISO raise these kind of spots. So like this fold is quite bad. Like if anything, you should ISO and make it like 5, being in position. Like you can just get away with ridiculous amounts of ISO raising against recreational players. So it's quite a significant like loss in EV when you don't end up playing as many pots against those guys as you should. Yeah, would probably also just defend by calling, but we can also free bet these kind of hands. And against flop size, again forced into calling and then just folding the turn on improved. Yeah, so this is a typical mistake that I see a lot of regulars make. In these spots out of position, we shouldn't actually be doing very much c-betting at all, so if anything, we should just be checking our entire range, and ace-queen here would just be a check rather than a c-bet. So yeah, against most player profiles, that would be the line to take. And once we get raised, we just have to fold. We have no backdoors. So if I see a peel here, I think that would just be way too loose. So good fold. The ace jack on the top left is a spot where you can consider squeezing instead of flatting. If anything, like, these hands are just going to get you in trouble when you flat, and you're gonna make a lot more money by squeezing from the small blind than cold calling. I do very little cold calling in the small blind, and I mainly play a squeeze or fold strategy. So this is a very marginal, not so great call. And I would prefer a fold here, and then after a fold I would prefer a squeeze, and I would only squeeze here if I know that the cold caller and the opener are too wide. And from stats it doesn't look like we have that read. We know the cold caller is too wide, but we don't know about the opener, so it's okay to squeeze there and get the cold caller in for sure. Because you know the cold caller's a fish. So the mistake is not noting that guy up quickly enough, and then realizing that you should be incentivized to squeeze wider because the cold caller's range is much weaker than it is in theory, or weaker than it should be in theory. River sizing there I think is a bit too small. So you bet flop, he calls, turn goes check check. And here, if you bet small, I think you get a lot more folds than if you bet 12 and try to rep a draw. Because this line definitely just looks way too value, and yeah, I mean the guy shows that he folded ace-5, which is crazy, but should probably be betting bigger. Because he's not going to have very many 6x or a6 on the river, and the ace-x he does is going to be ace-5. It's not going to be ace-king, ace-queen, or ace-jack, so you can bet quite big. So we see it a tank timing. This can be indicative of a bluff, but generally on these double ace-x paired boards, it's not a spot where people are interested in bluffing you. If anything, I would assume that this size is targeting your ace-x, basically assuming that you're inelastic to calling or folding with most of your ace-x, and I would probably perceive this to be quite strong. So let's go back and look at the previous action in the hand. So again, one leak that I already noticed is that you're defending too wide with your ace-x versus these kind of free x sizes. So you're against a middle position open range, so against an MP opening range you should not be defending very wide. If anything, against MP opening for 3x, I can just show you kind of what range should be opened. Let's have a look. So this is when middle position opens 3x and you're in the big blind. This is what the calling range looks like. So you're defending ace-8 offsuit, which is down here, right? And actually we are even allowed to fold hands like ace-10 and king-jack offsuit most of the time. And we're defending a pretty snug range. So that's against a hijack open before, and this is against a 3x. So we're free betting this kind of range, and then we're calling this range. So ace-8 offers are just way too loose, especially against a 50 big blind stack where more of their range is going to be a6 in the first place. So I think this hand will probably be getting you into trouble too often. Obviously results oriented, you might have been good there based on the timing the timing of the jam, but in general this spot would be one where I'm looking to fold. So I hope you don't call here. Yep. This is too loose again. You're basically just flatting too many hands from the small blind. If this is the really fishy player and he has a very high VPIP, then it's acceptable to like free bet, but just don't call like this wide. It's not going to be profitable, especially against 3x. So I would suggest brushing up on defending ranges, pre-flop. That would be one of the main areas I'm looking at, and then also some of the river spots. Like the bluff catching is pretty difficult, but once you develop a thought process and understanding of like what to do in a lot of those spots, you'll become a bit more comfortable. So I kind of just want to go back to this hand again. So this should have just been a fold. And then he triple barrels into you on an double ace high board. And you can be like, sure, he might bluff a flush draw or something here, but again, when people shove all in, this is usually very underbluffed, and he's basically not expecting you to fold an ace ever, which is why he jams, and that's why you lose against ace king. And you can say that it's a cooler or something, but in reality, that's just a spot where you can hero fold against most players, and you won't be getting bluffed. The 6-8 bottom left is close versus small blind open. I would probably be looking to defend that. So that's also another potential area of your game that you can work on. But I think a lot of it would be pre-flop, and then some of it post-flop. If you defend a bit tighter pre-flop and ISO a bit wider, like I'm not calling King Jack offsuit in the small blind, but I'm ISO raising here with Jack 9 offsuit against a limp. That's kind of the main difference, is when you have the ability to be the aggressor and you have position, you're able to play a lot more hands. So counterintuitively, like in the King Jack offsuit spot, King Jack looks like a better hand, but it's actually a worse hand because you're already facing a 3x open. But like here, Jack 9 is actually much better, and you should be looking to play this hand in position against a recreational player. So that would be something to think about. So we open the ace king, get flattered by short stack, go multi-way. Now we have a 10 high board and you have ace king and you just decide to snap c-bet. Again, think about what you want to accomplish with this hand, and you could deny some equity, but this guy's so short. So when you bet here, he has an option to jam, and you end up just having to fold a lot. You can't actually bet call this kind of hand. So I would just be looking to check here, multi-way. If it was heads up, then betting is a lot more acceptable. But generally, with those kind of hands, you should just be looking to check. Open up kings. Get free bet, and should definitely be full betting. And in terms of sizing, what size should we be making it? Well, we're 100 big blinds deep. He made it 10, so we should probably be full betting to around 2.3, 2.2x. So I would personally just make it like 23 big blinds. Going this large, this incentivizes him to continue with a lot of weaker hands like lower pocket pairs. You're just allowing him to like basically free bet fold all of those hands, whereas you have those crushed. So if you 4-bet to like 23, then, you know, what's he going to do with queens, jacks, and tens? He probably has to call the 4-bet, even though he's not loving it. So I'm going to suggest that you 4-bet a lot smaller in position. You can size that way when you're out of position if you're not very comfortable with playing 4-bet pots. But when you're in position, you should almost always be looking to just go like 23 bigs, 22 bigs. I personally even just raise like 4-bet like 2x. So if they make a 10, I'm often just making like 20 or 21 depending on stack size. And this puts people in a much tougher spot than if you go to like 30. Again, that might come down to a fear of just not knowing what to do post-flop with kings, or just not being comfortable with playing 4-bet pots, but that is the high EV option. Like, you can't really be... I'm not projecting fear or anything into that play. You might just believe that that's... or maybe that's just your usual sizing, but yeah. Just don't be afraid of getting sucked out on if that's what's going on here with your sizing, because you will want to size smaller and that will actually make you more money than sizing that big. Yeah, so I think that will probably be all of the spots for this recording. I mean, there were a lot of things that we can go through. My main recommendation, obviously, is to cover and think about pre-flop a lot more. Think about what kind of spots you should be looking to play with looser ranges in versus recreational players, and when you should be playing a bit tighter, mainly based on when people are opening larger against you, or when there's a lot of players in the pod and you're out of position with an offsuit, like combination of ace-jack, ace-10, ace-queen, king-jack offsuit. Those are the main hands that people tend to overplay. I did end up showing you some ranges very quickly. Pre-flop is pretty straightforward, but it's something that people will constantly have to work on. You're not ever going to get it like completely perfect. You know, you're not going to play like a solver or anything, but you want to refine pre-flop. You want to adjust your ranges in each spot. Mainly open wider when there are fish in the blinds, ISO fish wider. You would be surprised how wide you can ISO profitably against recreational players. So like the Jack-9 offsuit example is just one of those hands that you could have been looking to play. Same with the King-Jack being like a fold instead. And then obviously the river. So that Ace-8 hand is a very good example of when you should be looking to hero fold when you're against an opponent who's overbet shoving the river, and it's very unlikely that they would be taking that line as a bluff, and you might perceive yourself to be like close to the top of your range, but in reality you don't really need to think about any of that stuff. You can just exploitatively fold in these kind of situations and save money. I mean, if we go back to that one again, you ended up tanking quite a bit with that hand on the river. So if we look at like the normal speed of that hand, your timing on the river was, let's have a look. So you check, he obviously ends up jamming here, right? So how long do we spend on that river call? 5 seconds so far, and you literally, okay, 10 seconds. 15. You should have given yourself more time, because you do have more time. You're playing a regular table. You even have a time bank. And if you give yourself more time, you'll probably think about that, be able to think more about that spot logically and decide, okay, what's this guy doing? Well, he's jamming. My range is perceived inelastic, which means that I'm very likely to have an ace here, like trip aces, and it's going to be hard for me to fold. So because that's what he's thinking, I should look to actually fold because he won't be bluffing for this sizing. If he wanted to bluff and fold out non-a6, he probably would have bet a different size. So here he's just trying to value own me with a better ace or a boat. So like take your time with these spots. One thing that I can recommend when you're bluff catching is think about bluff catching or putting money in the pot as an investment. So a typical investor is looking to make a return on their investment, a profitable investment in the long run. And here you're basically in a spot when you're tanking where you don't know whether that investment is profitable. So if I were, an investor and I had money to give to someone to invest for me, I would be looking for people who make safe, high risk and reward, like high reward, low risk investments, right? So I would be looking to reduce the amount of uncertainty that each investment has, right? So in this spot, what I'm seeing is, okay, well, I'm uncertain about the outcome of this investment opportunity. So what does that mean? I can just skip the investment opportunity. So what does that mean in poker? Well, we click the fold button. Why? Because the fold button is 0 EV. So we are choosing not to invest. We're taking an option that has a known expectation of 0 instead of taking a investment opportunity that can be potentially negative, like extremely negative EV, or like slightly profitable. So this kind of spot, like at best you're breaking even or making a little bit of money on a call. At worst, like you're actually making a very bad call because the guy never has a bluff, right? So if you think about it from like a spectrum of, yes, this is a very certain investment, like the guy has his whole cards face up, to I'm not very sure, this could be bad or it could be slightly good, then you can take an option that like you have a defined result of 0 EV by folding here. And that is what I would suggest for you to do in the future when you end up in these spots in game. And obviously, if you keep taking these spots in game, you're going to be like, well, I'm just going to keep get ran over by people if they know I'm doing this. But basically, the point of poker is to improve and end up studying more so that you just have a better idea of like what spots are profitable. As you get better at the game, you'll find more profitable investment opportunities because you have improved your knowledge of the game, and that's ultimately what you're here to do. You're not here to actually like gamble on unknown investments. So you're trying to basically avoid as many spots that you're not sure about while you're playing, and then you mark the hand and go and review the hand. And as you keep doing that more and more, you're going to find that you end up in less of these like uncertain situations each time you play. And at some point you'll probably end up playing a lot of sessions where you're basically like, okay, I didn't have any tough spots, and then that's when you've kind of gotten somewhere. But you're usually almost always going to face these kind of unknown decisions in game, and you should just fold. So hope that this was useful, and just let me know if you have any follow-up questions. Awesome.